Well, let's bring in Washington Post political correspondent Ann Gearan. She joins us now from Washington. Ann, thanks so much for joining us. So the president had a contentious relationship with the intel community throughout his campaign and transition, and now it seems like it's affecting his presidency as well. What's the potential impact of this sort of tension?
Well, I mean, this has been a pretty fraught relationship for a couple months now. And we recall that the president not only cast severe doubt on intelligence findings as president-elect, that conflicted with his version of what had happened during the election itself, the question of Russian interference and meddling in the election, either to hurt Hillary Clinton or overtly to help him. That he discounted and dismissed that, which left a lot of intelligence professionals pretty demoralized. Then he skipped a lot of the intelligence briefings he was offered as president-elect, saying he didn't need them. That didn't help matters. But the question of now whether intelligence professionals would actually be worried about providing information to the president is a pretty extraordinary claim, and one that is, as you note, the DNI has expressly rejected. We don't know whether that's actually a sentiment that exists within the intelligence professional agency world. But what we do have is a denial that it would have that any reservations on their part would affect the passing of information to the commander-in-chief.
And the president has been obviously very critical of the leaks that have come in the last couple of weeks, in fact, since he was inaugurated. And in one story in the Washington Post, the Post had several sources on a story, not just your typical 2 or 3, but in one case, I think there were something like 9 different sources. The president is saying just in front of the camera and on Twitter that he finds them illegal. What's your sort of take on the way the president is seeing these leaks?
Well, I mean, he sees it as a him versus us equation, zero-sum equation, and that I don't know what he actually believes, but certainly what he's saying for public consumption is that that news stories about the involvement in Russia, about Michael Flynn, and other topics as well are the result of illegal leaks. I mean, I can certainly say the Washington Post stories are the result of some pretty dogged journalism that it requires weeks and of work and multiple sources. My colleagues are working on those stories. It's not as though disgruntled members of the intelligence agency world or elsewhere are handing us classified dossiers. That simply doesn't happen. But this us versus them relationship is one that Trump found to be very politically helpful to him as a candidate, and he appears to be continuing it in only slightly different form as president.
And we should just point out for our viewers that, and this isn't the only instance of this, but for example, the same reporter at the New York Times, Michael Schmidt, who broke the story about Hillary Clinton's personal email server, is also the same reporter who has broken stories
one of. I mean,
it's the Washington Post and others in that. But in other words, to show that this is a free and fair press that isn't just attacking the president, as Steve Bannon has indicated that the press is somehow the opposition.
And recall that as a candidate, Trump was a cheerleader for that whole set of stories and that avenue of reporting that drew on the WikiLeaks files, and there were several different tranches of WikiLeaks releases, which the intelligence agencies now say was largely coordinated through Russian intelligence. At the time, without any mention of Russia, Trump said basically, go WikiLeaks. He's like, I love leaks. I love all this WikiLeaks stuff. And he actually entreated WikiLeaks directly. He said, WikiLeaks, if you're listening, do you have the, the missing Hillary emails? It was a huge applause line. So we're talking about essentially the same kinds of material here, except that he doesn't like it now that there's a suggestion that, he's somehow complicit. His campaign or people who work for him or are associated with him are somehow complicit.
So let's talk a little bit about what else is happening today. Obviously, the source of so much of this tension centers around Russia, and we have Secretary of State Rex Tillerson at the G20 summit. He's meeting with his Russian counterpart, and he spoke a little bit earlier today. He kept it brief, but let's listen to what he had to say after that meeting.
Foreign Minister Lavrov and I had a productive meeting. We discussed a range of issues of mutual concern. As I made clear at my Senate confirmation hearing, the United States will consider working with Russia when we can find areas of practical cooperation that will benefit the American people. Where we do not see eye to eye, the United States will stand up for the interests and values of America and her allies. As we search for new common ground, we expect Russia to honor its commitment to the Minsk agreements and work to de-escalate the violence in the Ukraine. Thank you very much.
All right, so those comments came after Defense Secretary Mattis said in Germany that the U.S. still isn't ready to coordinate militarily with Russia. So how do you see this administration handling the balancing act moving forward? Obviously, maintaining a relationship with Russia and a dialogue with Russia is important, and clearly there's some common ground. But, every other day, something else comes up in terms of a leak or the talk of possible collusion or not collusion. How do they handle this balancing act?
Well, I think you see the parts of the new administration that actually have to deal with Russia militarily and diplomatically, trying to draw a firm line here that both Mattis and Tillerson presaged in their confirmation hearings. Basically, what you heard Tillerson say there: when it works for us to work with them, we will do so. That, by the way, is exactly the same thing that professional Russian diplomats and military officers say about us. That there are times when it serves Russia's interest to cooperate with the United States, or even to sort of cooperate with NATO. But that those instances are limited and would be of Russia's choosing. It's a way of setting up for Tillerson particularly, what's going to be one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, diplomatic challenge he faces. He's a guy who has himself long ties to Russian officials. He, of course, famously got the Order of Friendship directly from Putin. So he walked into the job under what's certainly many Democrats considered to be a cloud of suspicion that he was part of the Trump crowd that was weirdly friendly to Russia. So he's got a burden which you saw him working against during his confirmation hearing, to say, look, I'm a clear-eyed businessman. I don't have some particular affection or affinity for Russia, and I will serve the United States first. And today is the first time that he's actually been called on to sit down with Russia in the form of their longtime and very skilled chief diplomat. And try to put that, put that into action. Say where the United States will cooperate, and say where it won't.
All right, Ann Gearan of the Washington Post. Ann, thank you for your reporting and your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.